What would the world be like if you weren't afraid? I bet you your world would be pretty awesome. Perhaps it was not time that heals all wounds, but rather time spent in dream sleep. Sleep dreaming takes the painful sting out of difficult, even traumatic, emotional episodes you have experienced during the day, offering emotional resolution when you awake the next morning. Dragons are those things that you're afraid to face, but if you face them and defeat them, you get the treasure. All right. It's a big one. This is a big one. Episode 50. Episode 50. That's 50. That means I'm 2 more away from my goal. Gonna hit the goal. Actually, 51 would have been the goal, but no, 52 is the goal, but I think this would be 51 technically. But overall, pretty good. Thank you, Liquid Death, for supporting us along the way. Or we supported you. We supported you. But that's all right. We thank you. It was a net positive for me, right? I definitely think so. All right. Episode 50, getting into the book, Why We Sleep. What you'll learn in this episode: REM sleep, not the only dream sleep. The advancement from electrodes to MRI and brain imaging and reading. What is your brain activity in REM sleep? What's actually going on there? How REM sleep removes emotion from your experiences, which is, we go through chapters 9 and 10 today. 9 is okay, some interesting stuff in there, but 10 was really cool. And that's where we start getting into what's going on when we sleep and what that REM sleep's doing. Its impact, REM sleep being, its impact on PTSD, maybe a potential reason why PTSD exists. We'll get into some of that. A drug that may help with PTSD, and REM sleep's roles as we age. And there wasn't too much detail on that, but there was something interesting I thought was worth highlighting. Outline of topics today. We got updates. We got before we get started. We're going to just mention a couple things before we get started. We're going to go to the book. We'll dive in. Going to have some readings today from the book. It's going to be awesome. Highlight some of the things that I found were interesting and cool. And we'll have some real quick final thoughts today. All right, here we go. Updates. If you're listening out there, football, if you're a football fan, Michigan and Lions redemption. That's what that was this past weekend. We got messed up. It was not a good weekend for Michigan football and Lions football previous weekend, but this weekend was rocking and rolling. Big scores on both sides. Tigers' 4th best record, 6.5 games up though. So second place team is creeping up. I don't know how many games are left in the season. I'll have to find that out. Summer is back around here. It's 80s and sunny. So loving it. Subscribers, well, where's the womp womp? No movement on any of them. We had a bit of redemption. Last week, I looked and we were at 142. But before I did the episode, it dropped when somebody unsubscribed. Shame on you. And we went to 141. But it's back to 142. So same on the subscriber updates. Reminder, please submit your questions or don't. I might have to cut that out. All right, guys, before we get started, we're going through the book, Why We Sleep. It's a good book. It's, I picked it up a while ago. I read a couple chapters and I set it down and never got back to it. This would have been like 7 years ago. It was written in 2017, written by Matthew Walker, PhD. And I got in here to read the bio again. We're going to read his bio again. All right, you say so, boss. Matthew Walker, PhD, is a professor of neuroscience and psychology at UC Berkeley, the director of the Center for Human Sleep Science, and a former professor of psychiatry at Harvard University. He has published more than 100 scientific studies and has appeared on 60 Minutes, Nova, BBC News, and NPR's Science Friday. Why We Sleep is his first book. Why they put that on there? Who knows why they put that on there? But it is his first book. It's a good book. It's been read by many, listened to by many. Somebody at the gym there said, oh, yeah, I know that book. I've listened to it twice on audio. It's fantastic. And so we're just picking a couple chapters here and there and going through it. And, it's a fun thing to do. I enjoy it. Today we're going to be covering chapters 9, which is called Routinely Psychotic, REM Sleep Dreaming, which this guy, again, if you listen to the other episode on this book, it's very hyperbolic. Very hyperbolic. Like, who wants to think that they're psychotic when they're sleeping? Nobody. But this guy wants you to think that. All right. And chapter 10, Dreaming as Overnight Therapy. Oh, man, that was a good chapter. I'm looking forward to getting to that. But I didn't want to neglect 10 or 9 because it had some stuff in there that I thought had value and kind of contributed to the next chapter. So here we go. It is time to get into the book. We're moving along today. Don't let those dragons stop you. If you don't know, here in the studio there, I got to, when I was putting the studio together, I was like, hey, I'll put all these cool pictures up. It'll be inspiring. And I was trying to think about, there's nothing I'm really into. I don't want to put up a bunch of pictures of people working out. I mean, I'm super into like fitness and all that, but I don't know, pictures of it doesn't inspire me. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. I actually got assigned, I went to a few of his tour things that he does, and they give you a poster, and he signs it and all that other stuff. And I got that framed over there. I still haven't hung that up, but that's pretty cool. I could get that up. But I was looking for something to hang, like pictures, something. And dragons, dragons are a big part of human culture, and I'm not going to get into the dragon, but I got a picture of one over there. I just noticed it for like the first time ever, like doing a podcast. It's on the floor leaning against the wall. It's like creeping at me right now. But dragons are those things that you're afraid to face, but if you face them and defeat them, you get the treasure. And it's representative of, what have humans been doing since we got here? One of the things we've been trying to do is figure out how to be human, figure out how to behave in the world, and facing your fears, which dragons are scary, and defeating them by overcoming them gets you the treasure. That's how you change. That's how you adapt. That's how you become a stronger human, is by facing those dragons. Do I have the wrong book? Where are my markers at? What's going on here? I'm like rambling as I'm trying to find my place in the book. Oh, Lordy, Lord. All right, so what am I looking at here? 193 did not go nearly far enough. All right, here we go. Oh, bam, there it is. Yeah, so dragons are those things you need to face, right? And when you do, it'll be scary, but you keep looking at it, which is one of the main points. You need to keep looking at that thing that's bothering you, and you will find solutions. You will overcome it. And when you do, you're going to be reborn. You're going to be a different person, more capable, less fearful, which, what would the world be like if you weren't afraid? I bet you your world would be pretty awesome. Nathan hopefully edits out all these little gas releases. I don't know why I'm saying that right now. But I like the carbonated liquid death because it, I don't know, it's got some zip, it's better than just plain water. All right, here we go to the book. REM sleep is not the only kind of dreaming. Oh, this was an interesting point. Because I always thought the only time you dreamt when you were in REM sleep. Come to find out that's not true. REM sleep is not the only time during sleep when we dream. Indeed, if you use a liberal definition of dreaming as any mental activity reported upon awakening from sleep, such as I was thinking about rain, then you technically dream in all stages of sleep. If I wake you from the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, there is a 0 to 20% chance you will report some type of bland thought like this, the rain. As you are falling asleep or exiting sleep, the dreamlike experiences you have tend to be visually or movement-based. But dreams, as most of us think of them, those hallucinogenic, motoric, emotional, and bizarre experiences with a rich narrative, come from REM sleep. And many sleep researchers limit the definition of true dreaming to that which occurs in REM sleep. As a result, this chapter will mainly focus on REM sleep and the dreams that emerge from this state. We will, however, still explore dreaming as these other moments of sleep, as those dreams too often, oh boy, I'm not reading that right at all. We will, however, still explore dreaming at these other moments of sleep, as those dreams too offer important insights into the process itself. All right. So, not just dreaming when you're in REM sleep, you're dreaming at other times when you're sleeping as well. I thought that was interesting. All right. Another little, this is a little longer section we're going to read here. Got about 8 paragraphs. Electrodes versus MRI. So this talks a little bit about the advancements from, how we used to get brain imaging to what we use now, which is MRI, and brain activity in, oh, snaps. That's not funny. Funny for you. Oh my God. All right. So I put these sticky notes in the book and to give me a little reminder of what I'm going to talk about. And then when I pulled this off, it pulled the words with it. Whatever. All right. Your brain on dreams. We're going to read a few paragraphs here. In the 1950s and 60s, recordings using electrodes placed on the scalp gave scientists a general blank of the type of brainwave activity underpinning REM sleep. Oh my God. I don't know if you think that's funny. It's slightly irritating to me right now. Let's see if I can stick this thing back on here and figure out these words. Oh. What does this say? In the 1950s and 60s, recordings using electrodes placed on the scalp gave scientists a general course of the type of brain activity underpinning sleep. Dang, this is dumb now. But we had to wait until the advent of brain imaging machines in the early 2000s before we could reconstruct glorious three-dimensional visualizations of brain activity during REM sleep. And he says that it was worth wait. Sorry for that. Man, that's not good. So I think we got the gist of it. He's just saying, in the 1950s and 60s, we used electrodes. And it wasn't until the 2000s when MRI was used for visualizing brain activity. All right. Among other breakthroughs, the method and the results undermined the postulates of Sigmund Freud and his non-scientific theory of dreams as wish fulfillment, which had dominated psychiatry and psychology for an entire century. There were important virtues of Freud's theory, and we will discuss them below. But there were deep and systematic flaws that led to a rejection of the theory by modern-day science. Our more informed neuroscientific view of REM sleep has since given rise to scientifically testable theories of how it is that we dream, e.g. logical, illogical, visual, non-visual, emotional, non-emotional, and what it is that we dream about, e.g. experiences from our recent waking lives, de novo experiences, and even gives the chance to nibble away at surely the most fascinating question of sleep science and arguably science writ large, why it is that we dream, that is the function of REM sleep dreaming. Yeah, so kind of a wordy paragraph, but why do we do REM sleep? Does it have function? And he's going to get into that. To appreciate the advance that brain scanners made to our understanding of REM sleep and dreaming beyond simple EEG recordings, we can return to our sports stadium analogy from chapter 3. So I think I read that actually, or I remember reading it previously, but basically, he was given the analogy, if you hung a microphone in the middle of a sports stadium full of people, what would it sound like when you were awake? And so basically that was white noise. And then apparently when you go to sleep, which we're going to have to read this chapter because it's fascinating. This is something I read. I haven't read on the podcast. When you're asleep, everybody gets on the exact same sound wave. So it's like a fascinating analogy that he gave, and he's using it again here. Let's see, where was I? Dangling a microphone over the stadium can measure the summed activity of the entire crowd, but it is a geographically non-specific in this regard. You cannot determine whether one segment of the crowd in the stadium is chanting loudly while the segment directly next door is relatively less vocal or even completely silent. So there's no nuance, right? You can tell that the crowd is loud, but some areas of the crowd could be really quiet while other areas are really loud. And that's kind of what's going on with MRI. You just didn't get much detail. Or no, I'm sorry, not MRI, but EKG. EKG? No, not Dennis. Electrodes. All right. So the same non-specificity is true when measuring brain activity with an electrode placed on the scalp. However, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, scans do not suffer the same spatial smearing effect in quantifying brain activity. MRI scanners effectively carve up the brain, into thousands of small, discrete boxes, rather like individual pixels on a screen, and then measure the local activity of the crowd, brain cells, within that specific pixel, distinct from other pixels in other parts of the stadium. Furthermore, MRI scanners map this activity in 3 dimensions, covering all levels of the stadium brain, lower, middle, and upper. So again, electrodes, very general, non-specific. MRI, very specific. You can see what different areas of your brain are doing when you're sleeping. And so a lot of value in that, because this is going to explain what he talks about and how we figured these things out. By placing individuals inside brain scanning machines, I and many other scientists have been able to observe the startling changes in brain activity that occur when people enter into REM sleep and begin dreaming. For the first time, we could see how even the very deepest structures previously hidden from view came alive as REM sleep and dreaming got underway. During dreamless, deep, non-REM sleep, overall metabolic activity shows a modest decrease relative to that measured from an individual while they are resting but awake. Let me read that again. During dreamless, deep non-REM sleep, overall metabolic activity shows a modest decrease relative to that measured from an individual while they are resting but awake. However, something very different happens as the individual transitions into REM sleep and begins to dream. Numerous parts of the brain light up on the MRI scan as REM sleep takes hold, indicating a sharp increase in underlying activity. In fact, there are 4 main clusters of the brain that spike in activity when someone starts dreaming in REM sleep. 1, the visual spatial regions at the back of the brain, which enable complex visual perception. 2, the motor cortex, which instigates movement. 3, the hippocampus and surrounding regions that we have spoken about before, which support our autobiographical memory. And 4, the deep emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala and the cingulate cortex, a ribbon of tissue that sits above the amygdala and lines the inner surface of your brain, both of which help generate and process emotions. Indeed, these emotional regions of the brain are up to 30% more active in REM sleep compared to when we are awake. Wow. All right. So you start going to sleep and your brain slows down. So basically they're measuring metabolic activity with color temperature, right? So if it's dark and it's blue, there's not much going on. If it goes green, yellow, orange, red, there's more activity going on. And so the 4 things he just mentioned light up when we go into REM sleep. And I think he talks about right now how the cerebral cortex shuts down. And other areas really go offline. All right, so since REM sleep is associated with the active conscious experience of dreaming, it was perhaps predictable that REM sleep would involve a similarly enthusiastic pattern of increased brain activity. What came as a surprise, however, was a pronounced deactivation of other brain regions, specifically circumscribed regions of the far left and right sides. Is that far? Yeah. Regions of the far left and right sides of the prefrontal cortex. And he goes on to say, define this area, take your hands and place them at the side corners of the front of your head, about 2 inches above the corners of your eyes. He goes on to explain how to find them. I don't understand what he's saying. So these are the regions that become icy blue color scheme blobs on the brain scans, informing us that these neural territories had become markedly suppressed in activity during the otherwise highly active state of REM sleep. So like I said, certain parts fire up, and I'll say them again really quick. So visual spaces light up, the motor cortex lights up, hippocampus for memory, and then the others for emotion. So you can see, you're seeing your movement, your memory, and your emotion all get really active during REM sleep, which we kind of need to understand that if we're going to understand the parts in chapter 10, which have a ton of value. But before we move out of chapter 9 here, going to read one last little thing. Of a total of 299 dream reports. So basically, after everything I just read, he goes on to talk about some studies that they had done, and they're trying to, which I found completely uninteresting. They're trying to figure out, like, can we read people's dreams? Can we figure out what people are dreaming just based on their brain activity? Which you could just ask them, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just did not find it interesting, but there was something interesting that did come out of that. Of the total of 299 dream reports that Stickgold collected from these individuals across the 14 days, a clear rerun of prior. So basically, Sigmund Freud had postulated that dreams were basically the residual of the previous day that you had lived. And there was just like some sort of recantering or replaying of your events of the day. And so they're trying to figure out if that's true or not. And based on this, it was not. So again, of a total of 299 dream reports that Stickgold was the guy doing the research, collected from these individuals across the 14 days, a clear rerun of prior waking life events, day residue, was found in just 1 to 2%. Dreams are not, therefore, a wholesale replay of our waking lives. We do not simply rewind the video of the day's recorded experience and relive it at night, projected on the big screen of our cortex. If there is such a thing as day residue, which is what Freud was calling it, there are but a few drops of the stuff in our otherwise arid dreams. But, and this is how he starts the next sentence, but Stickgold did find a strong and predictive daytime signal in the static of nighttime dream reports, emotions. This will come as no surprise to anybody, but it's cool to see it backed up with some studies. Between 35 and 55% of emotional themes and concerns that participants were having while they were awake during the day powerfully and unambiguously resurfaced in the dreams they were having at night. The commonalities were just as clear to the participants themselves, who gave similarly confident. It was hard to follow what happened in chapter 10 here if you didn't have that background information. Here we go. We got a long read here, but it's all good stuff. So let me take a second here, get another drink. Crickets? Crickets, anybody? I got something in my eye as well. If you're listening at home or on a phone or wherever, you don't know, but there's something in my eye, and it's got to be an eyelash. It's open. I never rewatch these. Like, I don't, I cut it, I send it to Nathan, and he actually posts it, and I go and put the descriptions in and all that other stuff, which is done by AI. And but I never rewatch them because I'm just not going to rewatch them. I'm not going to sit down for 45 minutes or an hour and rewatch myself. I've rewatched the clips, so I don't know what I say all that because I don't know what he leaves in and what he takes out. I'll use his judgment. We're using his judgment. I'm having some faith. All right, so chapter 10, dreaming as overnight therapy. Here we go. It was long thought that dreams were simply epiphenomena of the stage of sleep, REM, from which they emerged. To illustrate the concept of epiphenomena, let's consider the light bulb. So he's going to explain what an epiphenomena is and give us a good understanding of it. And I like this right here. The reason we construct the physical elements of a light bulb, the glass sphere, the coiled wire element that sits inside, the screw and electrical contact at the base, is to create light. That is the function of the light bulb and the reason we designed the apparatus to begin with. However, a light bulb also produces heat. Heat is not the function of the light bulb, nor is it the reason we originally fashioned it. Instead, heat is simply what happens when light is generated in this way. It is an unintended byproduct of the operation, not the true function. Heat is an epiphenomenon in this case. Similarly, evolution may have gone to great lengths to construct the neural circuits in the brain that produce REM sleep and the functions that REM sleep supports. However, when the human brain produces REM sleep in this specific way, it may also produce this thing we call dreaming. Dreams, like heat from a light bulb, may serve no function. Dreams may simply be epiphenomena of no use or consequence, They are merely an unintended byproduct of REM sleep. Okay, so it's not saying it is. He's saying it's a possibility. And he wanted to find out yay or nay. Okay, back to the book. Rather a depressing thought, isn't it? I'm sure many of us feel that our dreams have meaning and some useful purpose. To address this stalemate, exploring whether dreaming beyond the stage of sleep it emerges from has true purpose, scientists began by defining the functions of REM sleep. Once those functions were known, we could then examine whether the dreams that accompany REM sleep and the very specific content of those dreams were crucial determinants of those adaptive benefits. If what you dream about offers no predictive power in determining the benefits of that REM sleep, it would suggest that dreams are epiphenomenal and REM sleep alone is sufficient. However, if you need both REM sleep and to be dreaming about specific things to accomplish such functions, it would suggest that REM sleep alone, although necessary, is not sufficient. Rather, a unique combination of REM sleep plus dreaming and dreaming of very particular experiences is needed to transact these nighttime benefits. If this was proven, dreams could not be dismissed as an epiphenomena byproduct of REM sleep. Rather, science would have to recognize dreaming as an essential part of sleep and the adaptive advantages it supports, above and beyond REM sleep itself. So, does dreaming, it's apart from REM sleep, although it's like kind of one and the same, we're kind of partitioning this up a little bit. Does dreaming have a benefit? And obviously, if it didn't, we wouldn't be writing about it right now, right? Or reading about it. But so he's going to get to it, and it's really freaking cool. All right, a couple more paragraphs here. Using this framework, we have found two core benefits of REM sleep. Both functional benefits require not just you have REM sleep, but that you dream and dream about specific things. REM sleep is necessary, but REM sleep alone is not sufficient. Dreams are not the heat of the light bulb. They are no byproduct. Dreams have purpose, basically is what he said there. The first function involves nursing our emotional and mental health, as is the focus of this chapter. Remember the title of the chapter, Dreaming as Overnight What? Therapy. The second is problem solving and creativity, the power of which some individuals try to harness more fully by controlling their dreams, which we treat in the next chapter. So here we go. Continuing on the book. Dreaming, the soothing balm. It's a little subtopic here within the chapter here. It is said that time heals all wounds. Several years ago, I decided to scientifically test this age-old wisdom as I wondered whether an amendment was in order. Perhaps it was not time that heals all wounds, but rather time spent in dream sleep. I had been developing a theory based on the combined patterns of brain activity and brain neurochemistry of REM sleep, and from this theory came a specific prediction. REM sleep dreaming offers a form of overnight therapy. That is, REM sleep dreaming takes the painful sting out of difficult, even traumatic, emotional episodes you have experienced during the day, offering emotional resolution when you awake the next morning. What? At the heart of this theory was an astonishing change in the chemical cocktail of your brain that takes place during REM sleep. Concentrations of key stress-related chemicals. Concentrations of key stress-related. God dang it. God bless America. Concentrations of a key stress-related chemical called noradrenaline are completely shut off within your brain when you enter this dreaming sleep state. In fact, REM sleep is the only time during the 24-hour period when your brain is completely devoid of this anxiety-triggering molecule. Noradrenaline, also known as norepinephrine, is the brain equivalent to a body chemical you already know and have felt the effects of, adrenaline, also known as epinephrine. Okay, so your brain is exposed to I'm like, is it epinephrine, norepinephrine, noradrenaline? Which one is it? Your brain is exposed to stress hormones all the time, except when it's in REM sleep. Interesting. Previous MRI studies established that key emotion and memory-related structures of the brain are all reactivated during REM sleep as we dream. The amygdala and emotion-related regions of the cortex, and the key mnemonic center, the hippocampus. Not only did this suggest the possibility that emotion-specific memory processing was possible, if not probable, during the dreaming state, but now we understood that this emotional memory activation was occurring in a brain free of key stress chemicals. I therefore wondered whether the brain during REM sleep was reprocessing upsetting memory experiences and themes in this neurochemically calm, low noradrenaline, quote, safe dreaming brain environment. Is the REM sleep dreaming state a perfectly designed nocturnal soothing balm, one that removes the emotional sharp edges of our daily lives? It seems so from everything neurobiology and neurophysiology was telling us. Me's got in quotes there, parentheses. If so, we should awake feeling better about discerning events of the days prior. This was the theory of overnight therapy. It postulated that the process of REM sleep dreaming accomplishes two critical goals. One, sleeping to remember the details of those valuable, salient experiences, integrating them with existing knowledge and putting them into autobiographical perspective. Yet two, sleeping to forget or dissolve the visceral, painful emotion charge that had previously been wrapped around these memories. If true, it would suggest that the brain state supports a form of introspective life review to therapeutic ends. Man, there's still more paragraphs I feel I need to read here. So much. So yeah, I mean, this is like a bomb though, like to discover that REM sleeps aren't, dreaming isn't just random, that it serves a purpose. And one of its main purposes is to remove the emotion from the day if it was negative, and to be able to record or autobiographically record our memories and get the emotion out of them, right? So it's going to get into the big thing, which obviously, if you don't know, people who suffer from PTSD, they almost always have really bad nightmares that wake them up, right? And when he talks about, well, I'll just let him talk about it, but man, I feel like I'm reading forever here. Oh, yeah, here he goes. He's going to give a little example here. Think back to your childhood and try to recall some of the strongest memories you have. What you will notice is that almost all of them will be memories of an emotional nature, perhaps a particularly frightening experience of being separated from your parents or almost being hit by a car on the street. Yikes. Also notice, however, that your recall of these detailed memories is no longer accompanied by the same degree of emotion that was present at the time of the experience. Can you imagine if that wasn't the case? You have not forgotten the memory, but you have cast off the emotional charge, or at least a significant amount of it. You can accurately relive the memory, but you do not regurgitate the same visceral reaction that was present and imprinted at the time of the episode. It's got a thing there. An exception is the condition of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, which we will discuss later in this chapter. Okay. The theory argued that we have REM sleep dreaming to thank for this palliative dissolving of emotion from experience. Through its therapeutic work at night, REM sleep performed the elegant trick of divorcing the bitter emotional rind from the information-rich fruit. We can therefore learn and usefully recall salient life events without being crippled by the emotional baggage that those painful experiences originally carried. Last paragraph on this section, and we're going to move on. Indeed, I argued that if REM sleep did not perform this operation, we'd all be left with a state of chronic anxiety in our autobiographical memory networks. Every time we recalled something salient, not only would we recall the details of the memory, but we would relive the same stressful emotional charge all over again. Based on its unique brain activity and neurochemical composition, the dream stage of REM sleep helps us avoid this circumstance. Absolutely cool stuff, man. Okay. A series of publications that were revisited on Resurfacing Day. Cartwright demonstrated that it was only those patients who are especially dreaming. He goes on, they ran an experiment. People had emotional, like it was basically, it was a breakup or a divorce, and they checked their emotional state, nearing the event, and then they checked it again a year later. And so here's kind of the conclusion of that. In a series of publications that I will still revisit with admiration to this day, Cartwright demonstrated that it was only those patients who were expressly dreaming about the painful experiences around the time of the events who went on to gain clinical resolution from their despair, mentally recovering a year later as clinically demonstrated by having no identifiable depression. Those who were dreaming but not dreaming of the painful experience itself could not get past the event, still being dragged down by a strong undercurrent of depression that remained. So again, just still reinforcing what he is believing to be true, and it ultimately turns out to be true, that REM sleep is helping devoid or separate emotion from the events of our lives so we can use them as useful memories, but not get triggered with the emotion every time we think about it. Cartwright had shown that it was not enough to have REM sleep or even generic dreaming when it comes to resolving our emotional past. Her patients required REM sleep with dreaming, but dreaming of very specific kind, the kind which expressly involved dreaming about the emotional themes and sentiments of the waking trauma. All right. And this is a little snippet that leads into where we're going to go next. Cartwright's data offered further psychological affirmation of our biological overnight therapy theory, but it took a chance meeting at a conference one inclement Saturday in Seattle before my own basic research and theory would be translated from bench to bedside, helping to resolve the crippling psychiatric condition of post-traumatic stress disorder. And we're going to start getting into that right now. Patients with PTSD who are so often war veterans have a difficult time recovering from horrific trauma experiences. They are frequently plagued by daytime flashbacks of these intrusive memories and suffer reoccurring nightmares. I wondered whether the REM sleep overnight therapy mechanism we had discovered in healthy individuals had broken down in people suffering from PTSD, thereby failing to help them deal with their trauma memories effectively. What? The theory proposed that a contributing mechanism underlying the PTSD is the excessively high levels of noradrenaline within the brain that blocks the ability of these patients from entering and maintaining normal REM sleep dreaming. So, I mean, who would have concluded that? It's just brilliant, right? Like, okay, so we know that there's no adrenaline. There's supposed to be very low levels of adrenaline, noradrenaline in the brain when we are in REM sleep. Well, what if the levels are so high throughout the body and therefore higher in the brain that it negates the positive benefits of the REM sleep because it's too high for it to function properly? And so it turns out that's exactly what's going on, and there's a drug for it, so we'll get into it. A testable prediction emerged. If I could lower the levels of noradrenaline in the brains of PTSD patients during sleep, thereby reinstating the right chemical conditions for sleep to do its trauma therapy work, then I should be able to restore healthier quality REM sleep. With that restored REM sleep quality should come an improvement in the clinical symptoms of PTSD and further a decrease in the frequency of painful, repetitive nightmares. It was a scientific theory in search of clinical evidence. Then came the wonderful stroke of serendipity. Unbelievable. Here we go. Soon after my theoretical paper was published, I met Dr. Murray Raskind, a remarkable physician who worked at a U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs hospital in the Seattle area. We were both presenting our own research findings at a conference in Seattle, and at the time, we were each unaware of others' emerging new research data. Raskind, a tall man with kindly eyes whose disarmingly relaxed, jocular demeanor belies a clinical acumen that is not to be underestimated, is a prominent research figure in both the PTSD and Alzheimer's disease fields. At the conference, Raskind presented recent findings that were perplexing to him. In his PTSD clinic, Raskind had been treating his war veteran patients with a generic drug called prazosin, Prazosin, to manage their high blood pressure. While the drug was somewhat effective for lowering blood pressure in the body, Raskind found it had a far more powerful and yet entirely unexpected benefit within the brain. It alleviated the recurring nightmares in his PTSD patients. After only a few weeks of treatment, his patients would return to the clinic and, with puzzled amazement, say things like, "Doc, it's the strangest thing. My dreams don't have those flashback nightmares anymore. I feel better and less scared to fall asleep at night." Let's go. Let's help some people. You know what I'm saying? They'll drink. It's magic. Here we go. It turns out that the drug prazosin, something like that, which Raskind was prescribing simply to lower blood pressure, also has the fortuitous side effect of suppressing noradrenaline in the brain. Raskind had delightfully and inadvertently conducted the experiment I was trying to conceive of myself. He had created precisely the neurochemical condition, a lowering of the abnormally high concentrations of stress-related noradrenaline within the brain during REM sleep that had been absent for so long in these PTSD patients. Their brain couldn't lower the noradrenaline levels enough for REM sleep to function properly. Prazosin, whatever. I'll spell it one more time. Prazosin was gradually lowering the harmful high tide of noradrenaline within the brain, giving these patients healthier REM sleep quality. With healthy REM sleep came a reduction in the patient's clinical symptoms and, most critically, a decrease in the frequency of the repetitive nightmares. Nice. All right. Many questions remain to be. Okay, so just want to get this little paragraph in there because, it sounds like it was going to work for everybody. We got the solution to PTSD. Yeah, okay, let me read this. Many questions remain to be addressed, including more independent replications of the findings in other types of trauma, such as sexual abuse or violence. It is also not a perfect medication due to side effects at higher doses, and not every individual responds to the treatment with the same success. But it is a start. We now have a scientifically informed explanation of one function of REM sleep and the dreaming process inherent in it. And from that knowledge, we have taken the first steps toward treating the distressing and disabling clinical condition of PTSD. It may also unlock new treatment avenues regarding sleep and other mental illness, including depression. All right, got a little bit more to read, and then that'll be a wrap. But that was the highlight, right? That was like so cool, like just by, again, I'm going to read a little bit more, but this was the highlight of these two chapters. And we needed to kind of hear what was in chapter 9 to understand chapter 10. Like, when you can, people who suffer from PTSD, man, you're basically living in a nightmare, right? You're afraid to fall asleep because these nightmares are going to happen. And they're the emotion, the actual emotion of the event is still there. It's like that thing that happened a year or two ago or 3 or whatever, you still experience the exact same emotional response. It has not been resolved. So it's not just in your head, your physiology is experiencing that every time. And it's just and it cycles up, right? Because now I experience that again. So my body dumped more adrenaline into the system, more cortisol, everything else to elevate me to be prepared for that response, but it's not even happening. And they're just stuck in this repetitive cycle. And it's cool that now there's a drug that can help some people that could, hey, bam, hey, you take this, that's going to lower those noradrenaline levels, and it's going to help you to start to process that event in the normal and natural way that would happen. And then when things are good, you can come off the medication. I mean, that's awesome. I had a time in my life where I poo-pooed doctors and I poo-pooed medical and big pharma and it's just a big evil, whatever, and everybody's out to get us. No, it's a balance, right? There's good and bad in everything, right? And we have to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff and not have an emotional reaction and think that everybody's out to, take us down. It's, I get it. I was there for a while, but, You got to come down more center on things. In my opinion, you could stay there if you want, but you just get more stress, you know? Anyways, super cool. We'll wrap up with a couple paragraphs here, and then we're going to call it. What do we got here? That's what I picked up. All right. Dreaming to decode waking experiences. So this is another little subtopic here. Just when I thought REM sleep had revealed all it could offer to our mental health, a second emotional brain advantage gifted by REM sleep came to light, one that is arguably more survival relevant. Oh, yeah, I forgot about this. This is pretty wild, actually. Accurately reading expressions and emotions of faces is a prerequisite for being a functional human being, and indeed, a functional higher primate of most kinds. Facial expressions represent one of the most important signals in our environment. They communicate the emotional state and intent of an individual, and, if we interpret them correctly, influence our behavior in return. There are regions of your brain whose job it is to read and decode the value and meaning of emotional signals, especially faces. And it is that very same essential set of brain regions or network that REM sleep recalibrates at night. What in the world? So I'm just going to keep reading because this is really interesting. I forgot about this. In this different and additional role, we can think of REM sleep like a master piano tuner, one that readjusts the brain's emotional instrumentation at night to pitch perfect precision so that when you wake up in the morning, you can discern overtly and subtly convert micro expressions with exactitude. Deprive an individual of their REM sleep dreaming state, and the emotional tuning curve of the brain loses its razor sharp precision. Like viewing an image through frosted glass or looking at an out of focus picture, our dream starved brain cannot accurately decode facial expressions, which become distorted. You begin to mistake friends for foes. So, the other thing that REM sleep is doing is it's basically fine tuning every day your capacity to interpret people's faces and how they're responding to you. And it gets interesting. I'm just going to read a couple sections here because you can, I'll just read it. With the absence of such emotional acuity, normally gifted by the retuning skills of REM sleep at night, the sleep deprived so they do some studies, the sleep deprived participants slipped into a default of fear biases, believing even gentle or somewhat friendly looking faces were menacing. So they ran some experiments. They deprived people of REM sleep. They showed them pictures of faces. They deprived them of REM sleep. They showed them pictures of faces again, and the pictures had a gradient to it. Went from like, they show them like 30 pictures, and it would go from happy to like angry over those 30 pictures. And when they had plenty of sleep, got plenty of REM sleep, they could accurately interpret what their facial expressions meant. When they deprived them of REM sleep, they started to mistake gentle people for angry people. I mean, it was wild. It is wild. We're almost there. 2 more parts here. So the point of that is, and here is a good point. Now think of occupations that require individuals to be sleep deprived, such as law enforcement and military personnel, doctors and nurses, and those in the emergency services. Not to mention the ultimate caregiver job, new parents. Every one of these roles demands the accurate ability to read the emotions of others in order to make critical, even life-dependent decisions, such as detecting a true threat that requires the use of weapons, assessing emotional discomfort or anguish that can change a diagnosis, the extent of palliative pain medication prescribed, or deciding when to express compassion or dispense an assertive parenting lesson. Without REM sleep and its ability to reset the brain's emotional compass, those same individuals will be inaccurate in their social and emotional comprehension of the world around them, leading to inappropriate decisions and actions that may have grave consequences. Wow. So, yeah, so that's interesting. When you don't get enough REM sleep, you won't be able to interpret what your spouse or your coworker or somebody in your family is thinking or how they responded to you, which is wild. How many times have been sleep deprived and gotten in an argument? Yeah. And then one last thing, which I just thought was interesting. Looking across the lifespan, we have discovered that this REM sleep recalibration service comes into its own just prior to the transition into adolescence. Before that, when children are still under a close watch from their parents and many salient assessments and decisions are made by mom and or dad, REM sleep provides less of a retuning benefit to a child's brain. So it doesn't really kick in until you're going to start going off on your own, which starts to happen in adolescence, which is interesting, right? Like, I mean, I'm just always just blown away when I think about, okay, so you're born and all these things are happening and they're happening for days and months and years. And then one day when you turn somewhere around 12 or 13, some switch just comes on. I mean, how does it know? How does it know now is the time to turn on the switch to move you from childhood into adolescence? I don't know. You hit your growth spurt, things are happening in your brain, hormones are kicking in. How about that locust or whatever it is that only comes out every 17 years? How does it know every 17 years? What in the world is... Did it count 17 times around? I don't know. Biology has been here for 1 billion years, and life is fascinating, to say the least. All right, so that's what I wanted to cover out of those 2 chapters. Super cool stuff. Found it really interesting. Wanted to share that with you guys. Some final thoughts. Don't freak out. Again, sure, sleep is important, but you got a long life to live. So pick one small thing and work on it. Don't feel like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? That doesn't help to add more stress to your life. Pick one small thing and work on it. 10 minutes extra sleep, improving our sleep environment. Improve your sleep environment. A 15-minute stretching routine. Cut screen time an hour before bed. Pick this one thing and just add it in there. And it should be something that you go, oh, I could totally do that. Sleep is critical to health, and we're learning just how much of it an impact it has on every aspect of a long, healthy, and productive life. It cannot be overstated, its impact on not only our physical, but also our psychological well-being. All right, next episode, AI special. We got another AI special coming for you. Stress signals what your body is telling you, right? Well, this is interesting. We just talked a lot about PTSD and stress and REM sleep, REM sleep and how it fixes it. And then we're going to go into an episode about stress signals. That's too good. Help us grow. Do you know someone this could help? Share it with them. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And as always, if you did have a question, submit it to Dennis@DennisFenders.com. You could also make a suggestion on an episode. You could also do that. That'd be awesome. All right, guys. Hope this was fun. I hope you got something out of it. Have a great week, and we will talk with you soon. All right, bye.